Hey South Hills, last week I had a chance to tell you about this amazing series that we're doing, and I mentioned to you that the host of The Blessed Life was going to be Steve Robinson, and today I decided to bring him with me so that you could put a face to the name and you can see who's going to be hosting. Why would you encourage everybody to make this a priority for the next 6 weeks?
When I went through this series on my own, it changed my heart, and I realized what the end game is all about. Something about it when you're generous that just lifts your soul. In Malachi, where he says, try or test me.
Yeah.
Try it and then see what it does in your life. The reason why he invented tithing was not because he needs our money. Mm-hmm. He invented it for our hearts.
I just want to take a moment. I want to clarify. How much does South Hills pay you for being the CFO of the church or being a board member?
I take no financial compensation.
And so when you share that it's important for them to be a part of this, it's your heart wanting to see them blessed. Mm-hmm. South Hills, I really hope that you've caught a glimpse of why we think this is so important for you to be a part of this. Go and register through our Church Center app, or you can go through the website, southhills.org, and register through there, or you can actually just write The Blessed Life on the Connect card. Every one of our campuses has a Connect card. Just write The Blessed Life on there with your information. I truly hope you take the time and you walk through this journey so that God can get a hold of your heart and change it forever.
We're wrapping up our series, Defeating Depression. If you're watching online or visiting us for the first time, my name is Efren Peña. I am the campus pastor here, and it's truly a blessing and an honor to be with you and have you with us here. My heart and my prayer is that God would grab a hold of your heart, whether you're online or here, that He would grab a hold of your heart and take you on an incredible journey that would eventually lead to life transformation happening in your life. Alrighty. So again, we're wrapping up our series, Defeating Depression. How many of you have really enjoyed this series? It's been just eye-opening. Yeah, it's been incredible. We have been fielding calls and text messages and emails, and conversations have begun with people that have said, hey man, this has been awesome. This has been eye-opening. I didn't realize it. I didn't understand it. And so today we get to wrap up this series. We've been talking about severe anxiety and depression and how we as believers can defeat it. I'll make the disclaimer once again. Everything that we've shared over the last several weeks, including today, it's not the wherewithal. There are steps. There are more steps to it. You just can't leave here and say, Pastor E, I said I got depression, and this is what he said to do. No, there's more to it. We are really just scratching the surface of depression, but we want to begin to speak. We wanted to speak about it and put it out in the open and have people begin to take the necessary steps to defeat depression, all righty? Again, I'll remind you that if you miss any of the weeks that leading up to this series or any of our other series, you can download the Church Center app, or if you want to revisit them or rewatch them or share them with someone, you can go to our website or the Church Center app. That's the app that we're using to get connected with everything here at South Hills, and so you can find our messages there and you can share it. It's free and it's super easy. So our last and final talk on this series is titled, What If Someone I'm Close to Seems Depressed? What if someone I'm close to seems depressed? And we've talked about this, right? We've said at the very beginning that some of us have people that we are surrounded by, people that we know, that people that we have relationships with, whether it's a family member, whether it's someone, a co-worker, or it's our neighbor that is going through some depression. And so what do we do if we know someone who is depressed, right? Let me ask you this. Ever had a time where you were going through a really dark season of life and nobody said anything to you? You were going through some dark waters. You were just in something very, very difficult, and nobody said anything to you. Either they didn't notice, they didn't care, or they were so afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing that they just didn't do anything. Right? You don't have to raise your hand, but just think about that. Because let's be real here, the only thing worse than suffering is suffering alone. Right? The only thing worse than suffering is suffering alone. To be in it by yourself, to feel like nobody knows and nobody cares. Nobody wants to help, right? But in all fairness, not all of us are naturally good at reading people or knowing how to respond. And what makes it even more complicated is depression doesn't look the same in every person. Depression doesn't look the same in every person, and not everyone's happiness or contentment looks the same either. One person's depression might look like somebody else's good day, and vice versa. Some of us are more naturally energetic and outgoing and bubbly. You know who you are. In fact, as I was writing this, I thought of one person, and I want to know if she's here. Jad, are you here? Yeah? That's point in case. If you've never met that lady, you need to meet her. She comes into the gym. Her daughter plays basketball with Noah, and she comes into the gym, and I just immediately smile. She hasn't even said nothing. Because it comes like a wave. It just comes with her. You ever seen like when they do like a modeling and the dress goes up, the wind is blowing? So behind her, Jada has energy. She's bubbly. She is smiling. And I sit there and I'm like, watching the game of the... Because she just brings that energy, right? And there are others of us who are more naturally introverted, keep more to ourselves and a lot less loud, right? So to identify someone's depressed state, you kind of have to know a little bit about their natural state. And that requires us to actually pay attention. It requires us to kind of be observant to people and give up the assumption that of who they are or who they should be, right? Because we all have expectations and assumptions of other people and who they should be based upon how we feel. So in order to kind of get a read on people, a good read, we're going to have to put that to rest and kind of say, hey, I need to look at it from a different perspective. I need to know who this person actually is before I give my thoughts and opinions and expectations. So let's start off with what is depression, and we'll revisit the definition we put on it on week 1. And depression is the experience of long-term joylessness or hopelessness, misery, and inadequacy. And that plays out different. It plays out in different people's lives in different ways. Some people pull away and stop answering their phone. Other people get a little cray-cray and start busying themselves up. Some people get mean, angry, and quickly and start nitpicking other people. Some people seem way more emotional than normal, and others seem like all of their emotions have suddenly disappeared. They just have that face like, doesn't matter. So once you start sensing that something isn't quite right with someone in your area, in your circles of love and trust and relationship, what do you do? Once you've picked on that something isn't right, with a family member, a co-worker, or neighbor, people that maybe you go on a hike with, people that you do life with, what do you do? Because we've all been in or known situations where someone was showing signs of depression and no one said or did anything and wish they would have because it ended tragically. Maybe in death, but maybe in a few years of them suffering without support. And so we've all kind of known someone that has been in that situation. So what do we do? And we've also seen the other end of the spectrum, right? Where someone who doesn't really understand depression kind of inserts themselves into someone's life and ends up unintentionally being really demeaning and insulting and dismissive, all of which kind of adds insult to injury and can make the depression even worse. So what do we do? How do we help those who find themselves in need of help? We've obviously don't want to be either one of these things, right? We don't want to be the one that kind of doesn't do anything, and we definitely don't want to be the one that kind of puts ourselves in there and not knowing what to say, how to say it, and makes things worse. So what do we do? Because the statistics being what they are, we're all going to kind of come across people who are depressed. That's a given. They're bound to cross our path at some point. And since that's a guarantee that it's going to happen, I think it'll be great for us to have a pre-thought out plan of action in place instead of just ignoring it or begin to put ourselves in a situation that can actually cause more damage. And so I'm going to share with you some really practical stuff today, along with a professional, right? But first I want to take you on to a small Old Testament story of a socially awkward prophet's interactions with a severely depressed woman, okay? In 1 Kings chapter 17, that's the story we're going to bring to the table here this morning. Starting in verse 8. Then the Lord said to Elijah, "Go and live in the village of Zarephath near the city of Sidon. I have instructed a widow there to feed you." So he went to Zarephath, and he arrived at the gates of the village. He saw a widow gathering sticks, and he asked her, "Would you please bring me a little water in a cup?" And as he was going to get it, he then called to her and said, "Bring me a bite of bread too." But she said, "I swear by the Lord of your God that I don't have a single piece of bread in the house, and I only have a handful of flour left in the jar and a little cooking oil in the bottom of the jug. I was just gathering a few sticks to cook this last meal, and then my son and I will die." Now, let me fill in some of these gaps here for you. Supposedly, God had already told her to feed him. But she's acting a bit annoyed that he is asking to be fed, which is somewhat confusing. If it was me, I would have been like, "Hey, did God not speak to you? Like, hello? Like, did he not tell you what was going to happen?" Because you seem a little bit annoyed that I'm asking you to bring me water and food. Now, everyone knows that you don't make somebody make multiple trips, right? Ask what you're going to ask at the very beginning. Don't make me go to the kitchen and then come back and you ask me again to go to the kitchen. Is that just me? Yeah, I know. There's some of you. We're in church. You can say the truth, right? And so if you want water and bread, then you should have said it up front. But he's yelling out into the kitchen, "While you're up, can you bring me bread too?" So she goes off on him. And she says, "I can't feed you. I can't even feed myself. God's not taking care of us. I'm going to make a pancake, split it with my kid, and then we're going to sit and we're going to die because I give up. I'm not trying anymore. You see, she's in a dark place. She's in a dark place. She doesn't care if she lives or dies, and she doesn't care if her kid lives or dies. She's in a dark moment in her life. But Elijah, a man of God, is sensitive and compassionate. So let's look at his response. He says to her in verse 13, don't be afraid. Go ahead and do what you've said. But make a little bread for me first. Then use what's left to prepare a meal for yourself and your son. Elijah is like, man, that sounds great that you're going to go make a pancake. Make your last meal and go die. But first, make me a pancake. Make me a pancake. How's that sound, folks? Sounds a little tone deaf to me, if you ask me. But why would he say that? Why would he say that way? Is he trying to be dramatic? Is he trying to be sarcastic? Is he trying to be funny? Well, we don't know. The Bible doesn't really tell us that. And I don't think his intention is to be completely insensitive to her, because he's about to give her some good news. In verse 14, he says, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, there will always be flour and olive oil left in your containers until the time when the Lord sends rains and crops grow again. So she did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her family continued to eat for many days. There was always enough flour and olive oil left in the containers, just as the Lord had promised through Elijah. Now, everyone just kind of moves on in this story. She doesn't apologize for coming out of her face. She doesn't say thank you. And he doesn't go back and bring it up either. Like, hey, you see what I just did here? Like, he doesn't bring it back up. So let's continue to read. In verse 17 and 18 says, sometime later, the woman's son became sick. He grew worse and worse, and finally he died. Then she said to Elijah, "O man of God, what have you done to me? Have you come here to point out my sins, and kill my son?" The widow turns around and blames Elijah, which makes sense. You blame the guy who's been bringing the free groceries to you. If I'm him, I'm thinking, listen, lady, listen here. Linda, listen, right? I already saved your family once. I've already saved your family once. I'm not the bad guy here. I brought the groceries. I filled the cupboards, right? Church, this is a picture of depression. We're starting to see a pattern emerge from her, that she runs out of food, and her response is, I'm going to make a pancake and kill myself. Then her son gets sick and dies, and she turns to the one person who has stepped in and helped her and says, man, this is your fault. This is your fault. Why are you doing this to me? There are no logical responses. There are simply just emotional ones. This is a sign of depression. Let's keep reading. Verse 19 and 20. But Elijah replied, "Give me your son." And he took the child's body from her arms, carried him up the stairs to the room where he was staying, and laid the body on his bed. Then Elijah cried out to the Lord, "O Lord, our God, why have you brought tragedy to this widow who has opened her home to me, causing her son to die?" Check this out. The widow yells at Elijah, and Elijah now yells at God. Did you see the ripple effect of how this plays out? How depression has a ripple effect on people. Verse 21, and he stretched himself out over the child 3 times and cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, please let this child's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's prayer, and the life of the child returned, and he revived. Then Elijah brought him down from the upper room and gave him to his mother. "Look," he said, "your son is alive." Then the woman told Elijah, "Now I know for sure that you are a man of God, and the Lord truly speaks through you." Now, there's a lot of messages can be pulled from here, but we're going to stay on track with where we're going. Another miracle takes place, and the widow is like, now I know that you are a good person, and not just here to take advantage of me, but now I know that you are a good person. Like, wait, you didn't think that before when I kept bringing food in? Like, did that not occur to you? Now is when you take notice? She didn't question God's goodness. She questioned Elijah's goodness, which is strange given how much he had already done for her. And I want to point out some practical things from this story, right, of what to do and what not to do. And this morning I want to bring in some help, right? I want to bring someone to help me with it. I would like to ask Stephanie to come up here to please join me. We have a chair up here. We're going to have a chair. And Stephanie has been a part of our church since we got here, and her and her family, and it's a family thing. So you have a seat there. Bring it a little closer, Rick. We don't have COVID. And yeah, right here. Have a seat. And Stephanie, introduce yourself a little bit and tell us why you're up here, what qualifies you to be up here, and to speak into our topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, my name is Stephanie. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Can we hear? Okay.
There you go.
Yes, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Throughout my schooling and my training, I provided therapy for individuals, families, couples struggling with substance abuse at a treatment center, at-risk youth, and students at the community college level. And I now currently provide therapy to individuals, couples, and families in private practice.
Awesome. So all that to say, she's far more qualified than I am, right? And to speak into this. And I wanted to end our series this week with kind of just giving you some professional insight, wisdom, and perspective to this topic, which I feel is so important to us. And so, again, I'm going to give you some practical things, and rather than me speak into that, I'm going to let Stephanie speak into that. And so the first part you might want to jot down or take a screenshot is we should ask, listen, and validate. Ask, listen, and validate. In the Elijah story, he doesn't know her well. Right? He doesn't know her well. They weren't buddies. They weren't friends. They weren't sending emails to each other or text messages. They weren't on Snapchat. Right? He doesn't really know her. He went to her because God kind of told him to do so. So he doesn't know if she's acting herself or not. Right? So he doesn't ask her anything, but he does listen to her. He does listen to her, and when she goes off and starts telling him about what's going on, why she's feeling the way she's feeling. So he's listening to what she says. He doesn't interrupt her. He doesn't tell her that she shouldn't be feeling the way that she's feeling, or that she needs to just get over it or kind of snap out of it, right? To kind of pat her on her shoulder. Come on, let's get going. This is nothing, right? He truly, fully believes what she's telling him. He says to her, yeah, go do that, which I think is a very flawed way of kind of validating what she's experiencing. But nonetheless, he is actually trying to validate. right? He's trying to validate her. So, Stephanie, in your experience, what might that look like for us in our world today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes that can seem like the most simple, basic thing, but it's probably the most impactful thing. Check in on people always, just at any time, but especially when you're noticing that it seems like something's wrong, they're withdrawing. Ask. It definitely doesn't hurt to ask. And even if they're not ready to speak about it at that time, you still have provided this space. You have shown that someone cares and wants to listen. And when they are ready, the next two steps is listen and validate. And again, probably the two most impactful things. So listening with the intent to understand. We want to listen actively and reflectively. Ask clarifying questions. Really try to listen to understand where they're at, where they're coming from. Reflect back what you hear them saying. We're not wanting to listen to respond. We're not wanting to listen to try to give an answer or a solution. We're just wanting them to feel heard. And then the next part being when we are ready for, or they're ready for that response, our response should be validation. And that's, again, for anyone, talking with anyone, we want to be validated, but most definitely those who are feeling depressed need to be reminded that their feelings are real and they're okay, that it's not their fault, that they're not any less than because they're going through this or feeling this way, and that there are people that are there for them and in their corner.
Awesome. So you have ask, listen, and validate. The second point that we want to do is to be helpful, resourceful, and encourage. Right? In the Elijah story, he gets food for her and heals her son. He's personally helping and resourcing her. He doesn't say, oh, that's not my problem. It's not my fault you don't got food in your house. Right? I didn't kill your son. Right? That's not what he says, right? He doesn't say, oh, go try praying about it. No, he tries to be helpful and resourceful. And when he says things like, don't be afraid, and your son is alive, that's his way of kind of encouraging her, right? He's encouraging her. He's not great at it by any means, right? Let's get this right off the bat. Elijah is awkward. Right? He doesn't say, how many of us been guilty of trying to be or do the right thing, but we kind of come off the wrong way, right? Right? We've all been there. And so he's socially kind of awkward in doing this, but he's trying his best, right? He's trying his best. And so, Stephanie, speak into that. How, through your experience, how that might look for us?
Yeah, that's kind of a big question. Help can look very different for, depending on the individual and what their needs are. And I know you mentioned that earlier as well. But kind of generally speaking, help can definitely be resources. That can be books, podcasts. It can be support groups. It can be lists of therapists or psychiatrists in the area that they can reach out to. Help can also be just with the day-to-day tasks. Most times that feels the most overwhelming to individuals who are feeling depressed. And that doesn't mean doing these tasks for them per se, but it's doing it with them. It's being an encouragement. It's being an accountability for them, a support for them. It's also helping them break these tasks down into smaller, more manageable steps and pieces that feel less overwhelming for them to do. On their own. And I think another big point to bring up with helping and encouraging is acknowledging and bringing awareness for them of the progress that they are making, the accomplishments they have made, the things or aspects in their life that are good or even just okay. The fact that where they're at and what they're feeling is temporary. We don't know how temporary, of course, but that they're not stuck in this, that they can get out of it. And I bring that up because individuals who are depressed have a very, very hard time seeing those things on their own. And so if we can just bring that awareness to them and help them have that awareness within themselves, that can be extremely helpful and impactful.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And the last part here is we should try to be patient, gentle, and reliable, right? In the Elijah story, when she's venting, he lets her talk. He lets her talk and doesn't cut her off. He doesn't get annoyed or yell at her for not being the way he thought she was going to be, or not doing what he thought she should be doing, or what God wanted her to do. When she accuses him, he doesn't take it personally. He doesn't take it personally because he knows that she's not herself, right? He's heartbroken. He's heartbroken on her behalf and tenderly kind of responds to her son and steps in, but he meets her. He meets her, he cares for her through the first miracle, and then he builds a relationship with her and is accessible to her, right? We hear the story that it wasn't just one day. They kept eating for several days. So he kind of stuck around. And so he builds this relationship with her, kind of makes himself available to her. But it's not until the second miracle. It's not until the second miracle takes place when he acts on her behalf that she actually begins to believe that he is a good person, that he is on her side, and that he's not out to do her harm. He's not out to make matters worse for her. That he's actually in her corner to be reliable, trustworthy, dependent, right? Stephanie, tell us, how does that play out for us?
Yeah, patience, yikes. I think that first we need to just have an understanding that working through depression is a process. It's going to be very different, like you said earlier. It's going to look very different for everybody, but understanding that it is a journey and a process that they are on. So we want to accept where they're at, we want to meet them where they're at, and we want to take off any sort of expectation that this is just going to, get better and immediately change, and just allow for that journey, and along that journey being that person that continues to remind them that they are worth love and acceptance, and that you're still there, in their corner along this whole journey. And I think consistency is huge, and I know that's part of the reliability too, but continue to check in on them, continue to provide help, when and where you can, and encourage them, and continue to be that consistent piece. Whether they're ready for that or not, they will know that you are there for that reason. And I think probably the biggest piece that I want to share with everyone in all of this is we cannot give to other people if we do not have anything to give. So as we provide help and support and we're there for other people, we need to remember to fill our own tank and just take care of ourselves and check in on our own mental health, because we can't help anyone else if we're not in a good place either. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's incredible stuff. Stephanie, thank you so much for your wisdom. Yeah, professional insight and perspective on all of this. We talked about it. I've made several jokes that, I never want to come up here during this series. We've talked about some very deep stuff, and because it is kind of dark, a lot of people don't want to own up to it or want to really talk about it. I feel as always the church should be at the forefront speaking on these things. But I also didn't want to come up here. I'm not the professional. You are the professional. I've just taken a lot of information and try to put it all together in the best way and kind of give people a surface to where to start from, right? And begin, and eventually acknowledge that professional help might be needed and come into play here. Now, if someone within our church today or watching online has questions for you or would like some direction on seeking professional help, how would you kind of direct them?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can. So please feel free to talk to me after or before church, or if you want, more private setting. Most definitely, you have my contact information. So if you want to ask Pastor E for that, or just ask me for my contact information, and we can set up a time. And I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can with that. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's give Stephanie A round of applause. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that. Let me wrap up our time this morning. Just incredible wisdom and insight into that. And so now you don't have to go home and say, Pastor, he said this. No, now you can say, Stephanie spoke into that. All right? Oh, he's judging me. Anyway, part of the reason I liked and I wanted to use the Elijah story here is because he does these things to help, support, and encourage, and all of the things that I just mentioned, right? He's asking questions, he's listening, he's validating, he's reliable, right? All of these things. And I felt like this story brought about all the things that he's done, but he did them imperfectly. He was a little bit awkward. It wasn't as if God sent a professional to help this lady. God already knew that he was kind of just a little awkward and didn't have all the right answers. And I felt like God was trying to tell us that we don't always have to have the right answers. We just got to condition our heart to love people. And I think if we love people, it kind of automatically positions us to be a blessing. And the truth of the matter is that maybe you too are a little awkward. But it's better to fumble trying to care for someone than to pull away, disengage, or ignore them and pretend like it doesn't exist. You're not always going to do what is right or say what is right, but try anyway. Try anyway. Because when in doubt, here's your guiding principle. Here's a rule of thumb. John 15:12 says, love each other in the same way I have loved you. And that goes for anything in life. When we're trying to figure out if this is the right thing or the wrong thing, if we should go this way or go that way, if we should make decisions on relationships one way or another, use this as your guiding map. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. The first stop for you is to get an accurate picture in your mind of how Jesus loves you. Right? How does Jesus love me? Because when you go through things, he doesn't get angry with you, right? He doesn't roll his eyes at you. He doesn't nitpick at you. He doesn't snap at you and say, move on, get out of here. Some of us have trouble showing God's love to other people because we are struggling to understand God's love for us. So what does God's love look like? I'll share this real quickly. Colossians 3:12 says, since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. That's what God's love is. That's how he loves us. And it's our duty, church. It's our responsibility. Whether you have a degree in it or not, whether you are a professional or not in this field of mental health, of physical health, of spiritual health, it is all of our responsibility to do and love like God loves us. Check this out. If someone around you doesn't seem to be doing well, ask them about it, but don't advise them on it. Offer to listen without judgment and to help them do whatever healthy things they're having trouble doing alone. Be of support. Be of encouragement. Be there. Be there for them. So who around you has been showing signs of ongoing sadness or being stuck? What's stopping you from asking them how they're really doing? And what might it look like to patiently listen and be there without giving unsolicited advice? Do you have, or have you set up enough space, a margin in your life to give them the help that they are looking for? For 5 weeks, we talked about depression. For 5 weeks, we defined it. We kind of talked about what people are doing to get better. Today, we shared what to do if we know of someone who is going through this, and how we can do our part. And if you find yourself today feeling depressed, or you know someone who is going through some hard times, we want to be of help. I said it last week at our Connect booth, we have some resources available that you may want to pick up and read on and kind of share it, whether they be books, podcasts, professionals. Today I brought a professional to speak. You may seek her out as well. I want you to know that you're not in this alone, that we as a church want to stand by you, support you, and encourage you, and walk this journey with you. That is our duty as a family, to be there for one another. Amen? Let's pray.